Hello everyone, welcome to another interesting and informative session of the Analyst brought to you by Vajiram and Ravi. In today's session, we will discuss 9 important articles as featured in the Hindu and Indian Express for your comprehensive understanding of the current affairs. Keep this in mind that the first 3 topics are very much relevant for the upcoming mains examination 2024, and we also provide you with the opportunity to attempt answer writing on the current issues. The topics are as follows. In the first topic, we'll try to understand not only the status and causes of unemployment in the country, but also look at what Budget 2024 has to offer. In the second topic, we will discuss the evergreen debate of climate mitigation versus adaptation, and we will also look at the stand of Economic Survey 2024 on this particular issue. In the third topic, we will look at the various urban transformation strategies which has been suggested by the lead editorial in the Hindu. Followed by the fourth topic, where we will look at the various controversies which are surrounding the Union Public Service Commission examination and the suggestions which it has offered. Finally, in the fifth topic, we will look at the details about the India Artificial Intelligence Mission. Towards the end, there will be news snippets which will also help you in the prelims examination, so stay tuned. The editorial analyzed the thrust which has been provided to the employment generation in the budget of 2024 by providing certain drawbacks which are associated with the newly launched Employment Linked Incentive Scheme. This newly launched scheme and the major issue of unemployment forms an important component of your GS3 paper under the larger theme of growth and development. Well, when our country's Prime Minister launched an ambitious target to make our country a developed nation or Viksit Bharat by the year of 2047, we as a countrymen onboarded the ship of aspirations to make this dream a reality. The whole idea or the foundation to achieve this dream was to exploit the rich demographic dividend of the country, which is basically the swelling of the population aged between 15 to 59 years or the working age population. If we look at the data released by the Economic Survey 2024, our country's demographic dividend is actually going to peak by the year of 2041, when almost 60 to 65% of our population is actually going to be in this working age. However, imagine a different scenario. Imagine where this youth, which is in the working population, is actually rendered jobless, majority of them, or they actually end up wasting the formative years of their life waiting for a golden opportunity to arrive. This actually raises the question that is unemployment actually a critical issue which is actually impeding the growth of our country? To understand this issue, let's refer to some important data released by the India Employment Report of 2024, which is actually released by the Indian Institute of Human Development as well as International Labour Organization, according to which the population which is in the working age increased only by a meager 4% in the last decade, from 61% in 2011 to 64% in 2021. At the same time, if you look at the proportion of youth which was getting quality education back in 2000, it was only 18%, and in the next 20 years it actually almost doubled down to 35%. But the same proportion of youth involved in any significant economic activity actually declined from 52% in 2000 to 37% in 2022. Now, is this data actually corroborated by the findings of the budget or the Economic Survey 2024 as well? The answer is yes. Look at this annual labor market indicator which has been released by the Economic Survey 2024. According to which the labor force participation rate stands at a meager 57.9%. What does LFPR actually means? It basically means that the proportion of the population which is actually working, or they are actually making some commendable efforts to seek the work. Now another question arises here, that what does this work implies here? The work here basically implies even if you are a casual laborer, or basically you are doing some meager jobs, such as for example transporting one good from one place to another, or you are a regular salaried person, which means you are regularly getting wages, or even if you are a self-employed person, so let's say you are running your own shop, or you are actually indulged in some kind of agricultural activity. Remember that this agricultural activity includes your farm section as well as your poultry section and all of that, right? Now that forms our labor force participation rate, and what is the percentage? 57%. Remember that in this LFPR we are also including the people who are seeking the job. However, the worker to population ratio, which actually denotes the total amount of worker to the total amount of population, is only 56%, which actually shows that around 40% of the population, even if they are seeking the work, they are rendered jobless. Now, if we start dissecting this data, out of this 57% people who are actually part of the labor force participation rate, 57% of them are self-employed, and 21% of them actually forms the casual labor. What is the casual labor? Casual labor is basically someone running a tea stall or your rickshaw puller. All of these people are actually working on what? On meager salaries, and they also do not form part of any kind of social security net. That is almost 21% of our workforce, and 57% is self-employed. The proportion of regular wage salaried person stands at a meager 20%. The another data which we have to look at is the distribution of workers by industries. So as per Economic Survey 2024, 45% of our workforce is actually absorbed by agriculture. That basically means that, let's say if there is a total proportion of the population, majority of them, at least almost out of 56 crore, almost 26 crore people are actually indulged as a farmer. So basically that shows the huge issue of disguised unemployment which is prevailing in the agriculture sector, and that also shows that we are unable to create a lot of formal jobs, because just look at the share of manufacturing industry here, that is only 11% of our working population. Now if we look at the wages which these workers are getting, imagine that back in the year of 2017 you were getting a salary of 100 rupees a day, which meant that if you wanted to purchase a bag of 100 rupees, you could have used your one day salary and purchased that bag. Now, your salary has increased by 10% in the last 7 years, which means that now your salary is around 110. But even if we calculate the inflation at only increase of 5%, it will compound to 127.5 rupees in 2017. Which basically means that now you are unable to purchase the same bag which you were able to do back in 7 years. So does that imply that the propensity to consume of the economy will actually decline? So first of all, the jobs are not there, and even if the jobs are there, there has been a meager hike in their wages. So basically most of the people are actually working underpaid. The next is, if we look at the major issue, and that is of jobless growth. So what does the data tells us? The data tells us that our country has experienced a real growth of 8%. At the same time, there is a huge issue of inflation of 5.4% as per Consumer Price Index combined. So there is inflation, which means that the prices of the goods has increased. At the same time, there is a real growth. So obviously, the unemployment rate has to decline if we follow the laws of Philip curve. But the unemployment rate here exists at around 6.3% at all India level. So basically our economy is facing another major issue of stagflation. The data also speaks for itself. So for example, the factory jobs which were in manufacturing, which we have created from 2013 to 2021, is a meager low of 32 lakhs. And out of this 32 lakhs, 40% of the total jobs has been actually created by only 3 states, being Gujarat, Maharashtra and Tamil Nadu. So the rest of the 25 states and other union territories have only created 60% of the factory employment. Also, if you look at the non-agricultural establishments in the manufacturing services, the jobs has actually declined by 16.5 lakh. A major reason for that is the pandemic overhaul which took place. So is unemployment a serious issue? Absolutely. And what are the major causes of that? The first of that is the rapid population growth which has occurred. So for example, as per United Nations Development Program, obviously India became the most populous country in the world in 2023. So there is a huge amount of labor force which is actually joining the labor force like every year. So for example, 70 to 80 lakh people are joining the workforce a year. And what is the amount of non-farm jobs which we are able to create every year? That stands at only 20 to 30 lakhs. So what will happen to these 50 lakhs people? Obviously, either they are not doing the job, they are sitting at home, the poverty of aspiration, or they are actually being absorbed in the agriculture sector or the meager works. That is what we can see here, that 45% of our population from 56.5 crore total working population is actually absorbed in agriculture, 13% in the meager jobs of construction, and 28% in the services. The industries which are considered as the harbinger of employment, that actually includes only 11.4% of our working population. The major reason for that is also the poor level of education infrastructure which exists in our country. So for example, yes, we have a lot of issues, such as for example high teacher to pupil ratio which exists, the issue of proxy teachers specifically in the northeastern states, or for example the digital divide which has emerged as a major issue. Then there is obviously the problem of various lack of infrastructure such as high technological universities and their filtration in the suburban areas. So these are the major issues we are facing when it comes to education. Now, let's say that if all these issues are persisting, the government intervention here becomes a necessity. But if we look at the government's expenditure on the social sector such as education and health, it has actually remained stagnant over the years. That is 2.7 to 1.9% of GDP. So that is also a major issue. Now, some of you will actually argue that, okay, if the public education infrastructure is not up to that level, then why not the parents step in and enroll their kids into some hi-fi school? Because what if they also are suffering from another major social issue, and that is the issue of poverty. So if we look at the data provided by UNDP Multidimensional Poverty Index, currently in our country there are 23 crore multidimensionally poor people. So obviously, if I am poor as a parent, I have low income and assets, that will actually translate to the poor status of health and education of my child. The child will ultimately end up with less skill accumulation and obviously will have less job opportunities, and thus the poverty will translate from one generation to another. So that is another major issue. So all these issues of rapid population growth, the poor level of education infrastructure, and the vicious cycle of poverty leading to less skill accumulation actually transforms into a large scale unskilled workforce. As per the data of Periodic Labor Force Survey, in 2022 to 23, there were almost 72% of our population which did not got any kind of vocational or technical training which is actually required for the modern industries, right? So now try to understand this. Let's imagine that I am an industrialist and I have got certain qualities which are actually very rarely found these days in any human being, such as compassion and empathy. So I do want to give employment to a large section of people. But I am now facing as an industrialist two major problems. The first is what? That the job which is I am offering, the skill set which is required for that, that is absent. So there is basically a skill set job mismatch. The next major issue is that there is no consumption demand. So obviously there is no demand for my product. So why I will actually produce them? And if I am declining the produce, obviously that will lead to what? A large scale job layoffs, which we have witnessed in recent years. So for example, just look at this data here, which has been produced by the Center for Monitoring Indian Economy, that if we look at the private final consumption expenditure, that is only 4% in comparison to the 8% growth which we have witnessed in GDP. So GDP has increased by 8%, but the demand for the product has only increased by 4%. There is not enough consumption demand, and that is also reflected from the attitude towards purchasing. Even if you look at the all India level, just look at the negative attitudes toward purchasing in the last few years, and it has only increased by a meager share. So at almost all India level, it exists at 2.8%, meaning that at least 2.8% of the population actually being a bit positive towards the purchasing. So the consumption demand has significantly declined, and there are various reasons for that. One is obviously the high level of inflation. So for example, the consumer price index combined stands at around 5.4% of inflation. So things has become expensive. The second is obviously the unemployment issue. So the propensity to consume has declined. At the same time, there is imported inflation because of the geopolitical tensions, the protectionist policies which has been followed by various nations. So because of all of this, there has been a huge dent on consumption. And remember that India is a consumption-based economy because 56% of our GDP actually comes from consumption. The next major problem is the issue of fragmented economy which exists. So for example, if you look at the large scale companies, they are considered as provision of large employment to the people. But in our country, if you look at the size of the companies who employ 0 to 49 people or 50 to 99 people, they are almost 70% share in our industrial sector. So now, obviously, if I am going to start a very small enterprise, I am going to hardly employ 7 to 8 people. Also, in the absence of social security code, the social security net, and good provisions of labor laws, I can just exploit these laborers and extract extra hours of work from them. The next is that in this regard, so obviously the economic survey of 2024 actually put a lot of impetus on the various steps which has been taken by India to tackle with this problem of unemployment. The first is obviously the National Career Service Portal. So basically what does this NCS portal provides for? It provides it as a platform where it actually integrates the people who are seeking the job and at the same time the industries which are offering the job. So as per the data of economic survey, almost 4 crore job seekers and 25 lakh employers has been integrated through this platform of NCS portal. The second is obviously the eShram portal, the first national level database which was created for the unorganized sector worker. So the social security net can be expanded to them. And it has been expanded under the schemes such as pension schemes of Atal Pension Yojana and PM Shram Yogi Mandhan, as well as the Social Security Code 2020 which has got a special provision for gig workers and your platform workers. Then there is a Prime Minister Employment Generation Program under which we are actually trying to promote the rural level or the traditional artisans. So for that, we are creating entrepreneurship opportunity for them, specifically for the rural and the urban youth. And the criteria is that they shall open the enterprise in non-farm sector. Then there is a collateral-free loan provision under Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana and PM Swanidhi Yojana. So Swanidhi deals specifically with the street vendors. Under PM Mudra Yojana, collateral-free loans of up to 10 lakhs were provided. And now let's say if you have just repaid this loan completely. So under the Tarun initiative of PM Mudra Yojana, now under the budget 2024, you can avail a loan of 20 lakh rupees. Also, for the people belonging to SC/ST community, there is a particular scheme of Stand Up India which was launched. So under this, if there is any bank branch and it is a public sector bank, so it shall provide loan from 10 lakh to 1 crore to at least one SC/ST and at least one woman member. So the government has taken all of these steps. At the same time, in budget 2024, the government has went one step further and has launched a new scheme called as Employment Linked Incentive Scheme, which has 3 important components: Scheme A, B and C. The Scheme A deals with that now the government is going to do what? It is going to provide the monthly wage to all the employees entering in any formal sector, the first monthly wage. And that will have a limit up to 15,000 rupees. And that 15,000 rupees will be provided in 3 installments. The salary eligibility here is up to 1 lakh per month. So the government is saying to the industries that, okay, you just employ the people. The first month's salaries, I am going to bond the cost of that and I am going to provide up to 15,000 rupees. The idea is that in the first tranche 5,000 will be released, and after that you need to require a compulsory online financial literacy course, and only after that the second tranche of the scheme will be released. So the provision of this scheme has the potential to benefit at least 2.1 crore youth. The second section of the scheme is the wage subsidy for the first timers, but now specifically for the employment in the manufacturing sector. And here the government is saying that I am going to provide incentive up to 8 to 24% to both employers as well as employees. The criteria is that the company shall show the record of 3 years record of EPFO contribution. The third section is that there shall be additional employment in all the sectors, and now there will be a reimbursement to the employers which will be done by the government. That will be around 3,000 rupees per month for providing the jobs. So now basically the government is creating a supply side incentive for the industries to create the jobs for the people. At the same time, the government has taken several other steps, such as for skilling purpose. The government is providing internship opportunities to 1 crore youth in top 500 companies, and they will be getting the monthly allowance of 5,000 rupees as well. Then there will be skilling of 20 lakh youths, which will be done between 2024 to 29, and for that purpose 1,000 industrial training institutes will be created. At the same time, if you want to enroll in some higher education, so 1 lakh students will get the opportunity to have concessional education loan up to 10 lakh rupees. But remember that only in the domestic institutes. The second is your MSME promotion. So for that, the government has launched the credit guarantee and self-financing guarantee funds, under which collateral-free loans will be provided to these MSMEs. The next is to create the demand. The government is actually has just cut down the custom duty on gold, silver, mobile phones, as well as has increased the capital expenditure to 11.11 lakh crore rupees. But even beside all of this, the editorial provides that there are certain flaws which exist in this employment linked incentive scheme. The first of being is that this is a short-term incentivization. So if the government is saying that, okay, you provide the job and we'll provide you the subsidy for that or the first month wages, the idea is that such jobs are only going to exist till the subsidy period, and after that in medium term there will be actually a lot of job layoffs which can take place when the government pulls off the money. The second is that because it is a EPFO based schemes, the companies can actually misuse it and leads to the siphoning of funds. So it can show that, okay, I have provided this much wage to the people, or I have enrolled this much of people. So that much of data verification will actually be very difficult for the government. The third is that the misassumption which the government has, that there exists enough labor demand in the non-agriculture sector. What if the demand is not there? Why these industries are going to employ these people at the first place? Because there is no further chances of profit making. The next is the accuracy of the official GDP estimate. Now let's try to understand this. As per the economic survey, the real GDP growth in the last year has been 8.2%. The nominal GDP growth rate is 9.6%. So if we reduce inflation from nominal GDP growth, we get the real GDP growth. That basically means what? 9.6 minus 8.2. So what is our current inflation level as per the economic survey? That is 1.4%. But as we have been discussing, as per consumer price index combined, that is around 5.4%. So basically what the editorial suggests is that the growth which the government is showing, that actually is only on the paper and does not exist in the reality. And if there is no growth, why these industries are going to actually create some job? The last issue is the issue of fiscal consolidation. So the government is saying that we are actually going to bring down the fiscal deficit to 4.9% of GDP at this year. At the same time, you are providing this much of expenditure to these new schemes. So basically this fiscal stimulus actually act in contradiction to the fiscal consolidation path which the government is trying to take. So the editorial suggests that there are certain way forwards which we need to take. The first is that we shall shift to the demand side strategy. Try to create the demand. For that, increase the wages of the people, provide tax rebatements. At the same time, generate the employment directly. For what we can do, we can just release MG Narega, the urban format of that. So release MG-Narega in the urban areas as well. At the same time, to increase the rural demand, just increase the days which are provided under MG-Narega from 100 to let's say 150 days. At the same time, expand the capital expenditure by the public sector units in the labor intensive sectors and not the only in the technology based sectors. So these are the innovative suggestions which has been provided by the report. On the basis of that, try to attempt this particular question. If possible, write your answer in the comment box and we move forward to the next news, where the lead article actually highlights the issue of excessive focus on climate mitigation which is being done by the developed nation and what is the impact of that on developing nations like India. This evergreen issue of climate mitigation versus adaptation and the findings of the Economic Survey 2024 forms an important component of your GS3 paper under the larger theme of environment conservation and climate change. Let's first try to understand what are these two concepts of mitigation and adaptation. So let's say that we as a country, as per the International Energy Agency, 56% of our total energy production is actually produced from fossil fuels such as coal-based thermal power plants. Now, these fossil fuels are responsible for the global warming. And at international level, what we do, we sign an agreement, let's say Paris Agreement. And under this Paris Agreement, we have to strive to bring down the global temperature by 1.5 degrees Celsius by 2100. So basically now what we need to do is we need to phase out this fossil fuel and transition from this fossil fuel based energy to renewable energy. Now for that purpose, what we'll be doing? So let's say as a country, we say that, okay, we are going to install a large number of rooftop solar panels. But this is completely a new investment which we'll be going to make, right? There is a kind of a transition from one kind of energy to another. And this is what we mean by the mitigation, where we focus on renewable energy, more efficient industrial processes, eco-friendly transportation, etc. such as, for example, the introduction of electric vehicles. So obviously we were not hearing about electrical vehicles 20 years back, but now that is something which is on our tongue. On the other hand, there exists the issue of adaptation, another approach which we can take to this climate change which is taking place. In this, the whole transitioning of the economy is not required. Rather, we can just improve the existing system, such as more resilient agriculture species, or delimitation of the coastal risk areas, or creating flood barriers in the urban spaces. So that is the idea. But now, what is the major impetus which these developed nations are putting on the developing countries? That is that you should transform and adopt these mitigation purposes. This is where the Economic Survey 2024 gets highly critical of developed nation, where it states that excessive preoccupation with meeting this 1.5 degrees Celsius target which we have set under the Paris Agreement has put impossible pressure on developing nations, and thus we are actually compromising our short-term needs. Right? So for example, right now we are looking at the issue of unemployment. What is our short-term need? The short-term need is to create more employment. Now, either we can force the industries to create employment or we can divert them towards adopting the greener technologies. The industries will be like, okay, we are putting a lot of cost to transform into the green company, and thus we do not have cost to give to this labor. So obviously the unemployment is going to remain a major issue. These are the challenges which Economic Survey 2024 addresses, and it tries to expose the hypocrisy of the developed nation. So it basically says that, okay, as a developed nation, these countries are doing what they are trying to set up ambitious target for us to achieve, such as, for example, even our country has nationally determined contribution targets. But does these countries are achieving the targets? Let's have a look at that. So it says that if you look at the World Meteorological Organization climate report, which was actually released in 2024, what it says that 2023 was the warmest year in the record, and the temperature has already risen by 1.45 degrees Celsius, which is very close to breaching the Paris Agreement Accord. The next is that the past 9 years has been the warmest, and if you look at the concentration of the main greenhouse gases, such as, for example, carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, all of that has reached to their highest level. Which are the countries which are responsible for such high emissions? Well, 30% of that carbon emission actually comes from China. 13.5% actually comes from US. And India, which has almost 1/6 of the population of the world, and at the same time we are the 5th largest economy and also one of the fastest growing economies in the world, our contribution is only at 7.3%. So why we should take the responsibility of this mitigation exercise? The next is that if you look at the annual per capita emission of the country, that is only 33% of the global average. At the same time, if you are putting up some cause or some initiative, then walk the talk, right? Lead from the example. On the other hand, what these European countries are doing, they are actually withdrawing from the efforts which they were taking to mitigate the climate change. For example, the United Kingdom, it actually postponed the banning of petrol and diesel vehicles, which it was going to do by 2030, now to 2035. If you look at Germany, it has also diluted the rules for banning the boilers which were running on the fossil fuels. At the other hand, these developed countries, they are actually trying to pressurize the developing countries by putting what? By putting importing charges or tariffs on our products, saying that they contain a lot of carbon content. So obviously, yes, their worry is actually quite natural and quite justified, because as if you look at the European State of Climate report, the Europe is the warmest continent, right? But at the same time, they are trying to just curb down our economic potential by putting down this tariff, and at the same time they are providing export rebate to their products, thus making their products more competitive in the international market. Now, okay, let's say that as a country we agree that okay, we are going to put all these mitigation effort, and we are going to install the solar panels under the PM Surya Ghar Yojana, or we are going to promote electrical vehicle under the FAME scheme. So it's not like India has not taken the step, it has already taken such major steps as well. But what is the basis of transformation to this mitigation process? That is that we require a lot of critical and rare earth minerals on which these solar panels or electric vehicles are created, the semiconductor chips. Now look at the dominance which China has in the cell components, battery cells, electrical vehicles and all of that. So again, there is a race which has been ensued to procure this rare earth mineral. Does that not leading to more greenhouse gas emission? At the same time, there is one country which is actually becoming a lot stronger. Countries such as China, European Union, United States. So there is a huge potential for supply chain disruptions which China can cause. At the same time, as a country, we are hugely import dependent on these rare earth minerals. So obviously our trade deficit, balance of payment is actually being compromised. All these issues has been highlighted by the economic survey. It says that okay, even if we want to transition the economy from this fossil fuel to green energy based economy, there is a huge cost of it. As highlighted by the various reports of United Nations, such as for example, as per the Adaptation Gap report of 2023, the finance which is required currently is 18 times greater than the current level of finance which is being offered by the developed nation. So under the Paris Agreement of 2015, it was decided that these developed countries will bear the cost of transitioning of the developing countries because of their historical responsibilities, because industrial revolution took place there first, and thus they are actually responsible for the huge carbon dioxide emission which has taken place. So they said that okay, we are going to provide $100 billion from the year of 2020. Now we are talking in the year of 2024. Can you guess what is the amount of funds which they have actually transferred till now to the developing countries? The total is only $20 billion, and US has even withdrawn from that as well. The next is the Standing Committee on the Finance under the UNFCCC. So it says that these developing nations, they require at least $6 to $12 trillion of funding till the year of 2030 to meet the nationally determined contributions. What is the status of India? So India has also taken some ambitious nationally determined contribution. For example, it said that okay, we are going to reduce our emission intensity of its GDP by 45% by 2030. For that purpose, we launched the LIFE mission as well. We said that 50% of our total installed energy capacity will come from renewable energy. Thus, we are going to reduce the emission intensity by 33 to 35%. This was the target. Now we have actually advanced it to 45%. We are also said that we are going to create an additional carbon sink of 2.5 to 3 billion tons of CO2. But to do all of that, as per the economic survey, if we follow such a long-term low emission strategy, because we have also said that by the year of 2070, we are actually going to become carbon neutral, around 56.6 trillion rupees is required. That is almost 2 to 3 trillion dollar. And majority of this funding is actually being sourced from what? From the government sources. Because we can obviously see the incapability of private sector to actually channelize the large amount of funds which is required for such energy transition. So first of all, there is no fund which is flowing from the developed nation. At the same time, under the agreements, you are trying to pressurize the developing countries to take this mitigation approach. Now, what does the COP28, which took place in UAE, what did that provided? So it's going to set up, it said that now we will be setting up a new collective quantified goal under which there will be an annual goal of climate finance by the developing countries, and when this national new collective quantified goal is going to come up by the year of 2025, so we have to wait for another 1 year and see. But in this direction, India under its G20 presidency put 3 important demands. It said, first of all, there shall be an ambitious mobilization goals which we have to achieve to get to that achieve the nationally determined contribution. And it said that whatever is the grant which is being provided by the developed nation, that shall be highly concessional or grant based. So don't create further liability on the developing nations. The third, it said that there shall be a balance between the financing of mitigation. Okay, we are going to do that, but at the same time we are also going to focus upon adaptation. And is India has taken several steps in that regard? Yes, absolutely. So for example, we launched the International Solar Alliance, right, which is actually meant to bring the 121 countries which lie together completely between the 2 tropics. The idea was that we are going to generate around 1000 gigawatt of solar generation capacity by 2030, and for that mobilization of 1 trillion fund was directed towards. The second was that we also launched the One Sun, One World, One Grid initiative along with United Kingdom. And we said that what we are going to do under this initiative, we are going to create a uniform one solar power grid, which is actually going to connect, like India will be as a mediatory. It will connect the Middle East, the South Asia, the Southeast Asia in the first phase, and then it will expand to all over the world. The idea was that we are going to create 2600 gigawatt of solar integrated energy capacity by the year of 2050 here. The next was the climate disaster resilience infrastructure which we launched. And the idea was that we are going to create the climate disasters which are taking place. So for that we are going to improve the infrastructure, and for that we are going to protect at least 3 billion lives by the year of 2050. The next was obviously the infrastructure resilience for the island states. So for that purpose, India has actually collaborated with CDRI as well as the small island developed states. Then there was a lead IT initiative which was actually launched by India with Sweden, where we are actually nudging the industries to transform towards green energy. So that was the target. Now the article suggests that we shall put impetus on mitigation as well, right? So okay, there is a kind of impetus which you are putting on mitigation. We shall integrate it with adaptation by doing what? By creating climate resilient infrastructure. So just look at this beautiful diagram here. Let's say if you are living in areas of extreme precipitation, what we can do? We can create permeable pavements, we can create retention ponds, right? We can create further blue and green spaces. If there is extreme heat, we can create green roofs such as adopted by the Singapore, or trees and other vegetation. For this we can also use the Miyawaki method. The second is the climate proofing of smart cities mission is required, as well as making the climate friendly railway infrastructure. Finally, the article suggests that we shall nudge the social behavior under this mission life which we had launched. With this, we have reached to the end of this particular article. Just try to attempt this mains question, a very probable one. We move forward to the next news. The lead editorial highlights the various steps which has been taken by the Government of India in the Budget 2024 for the planned urban development. Thus, in this article, we are going to study about various urban transformation strategies which forms an important component of your GS1 paper under the larger theme of urbanization, problems and its remedies. Well, as per the Niti Aayog, currently around 36% of our population, which amounts to almost 56 crore people, they live in the cities. And as per the World Cities Report of 2022, by the year of 2030 itself, at least 40% of the population will be living in the cities. Thus, the urbanization has become a characteristic feature of the Indian society. And this large scale of people who are actually taking the refugees in these urban cities because of the employment opportunities or the high level of education or health which it gets, that has actually led to an issue of unplanned urbanization. What are the issue which revolves around it? The first is obviously the unplanned development which has taken place. So for example, as per the Niti Aayog report, there is no master plan for 66% of the 4,000 statutory towns of India. For example, just look at this data of Delhi of 2021. Just look at the amount of unauthorized colonies and the population which is living there, or for example the basti settlements or the dwelling units and the amount of population, and what it leads to: the encroachment of public land, the state government, the illegal colonies in the violation of the master plans. And even if such master plans has been created in some cities, let's say for example in Delhi, they actually run on what? They run on archaic and outdated laws. For example, the drainage system is being regulated under the Water Act of 1974, or the polluting industries are being regulated under the Air Act of 1981. Now let's say that you have become in charge of a particular area and you are considering that, okay, these congested streets which exist, I'm going to expand them. Then when you are going to take this initiative as a district magistrate in the future, you are going to face the web of bylaws and development regulations which exist, such as for example the Model Building Code of 2016, or the various unauthorized property rights of the people, the unauthorized, the unclaimed, under the Article 300A of the Constitution, which provides it as a legal right. The next is that, okay, let's say you say that, okay, this is a particular area and in this 100-meter square there exist 100 of the houses. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to transform it by creating a sky-high building, and I'm going to create a rented apartment. So that will actually increase the living conditions of the population here. But then you will face actually the major issue of acquisition of the property rights from these people living here and their rehabilitation. Another major issue is the poor state of urban local governance under the 74th Constitutional Amendment Act of 1992. Where these urban local governments are hugely dependent from the grants by central and state government, and their own tax revenue actually forms only the 40% of the total revenue which they get. Also, out of this revenue, the major share is actually held by the property tax. But remember, the property tax which are being collected by these municipalities, it only forms 0.15% of the GDP. And if we compare it to the other developing countries such as China, they collect the municipality tax up to around 2% of their GDP. So obviously their own tax revenue is meager low, and there exists a huge dependence on the funds by the government. The next problem is that because of these issues compounded, it has actually created to a socio-spatial hierarchical system, where in the same city we have got the house of the richest man of the Asia and the biggest slum which exists in the Asia, that is Dharavi. We can also substantiate this with various data which is actually important from your mains examination, such as for example the Oxfam report 2023, according to which the people living in the cities, the 1% of the population actually holds the 42% of the assets. Or for example, we can actually give the data which was published by the National Council of Applied Economic Research report 2023, according to which 23% of the population which lives around the cities in our country, 25%, sorry, all of that lives in what? In slums. And this ghettoization of slums has also become a major issue. Thus, the article highlights that there has been several innovative steps which has been taken by the budget 2024 under the theme of Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, which aims to provide what? In situ slum redevelopment, credit-linked subsidy scheme, affordable housing in the partnership with the state and the beneficiary-led individual house construction. So let's say that till now, how much Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana has actually come into the benefit of the people. So as per the data, 85 lakh housing units has been created for economically weaker section and middle income groups. And thus, under budget 2024, the scheme has been revamped and a new target has been set to create 1 crore housing units with investment of 10 lakh crore in the next 5 years. The idea is that the interest subsidy will be enhanced to facilitate loans at affordable rates for the houses. And there will be a new rental housing scheme which has been launched under Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana to accommodate the industrial workers. And here it will be obviously based upon public-private partnership model, and there will be a provision for viability gap funding. What is viability gap funding? So there are certain projects for which the projects obviously seems to be the financially inclusive ones, but the project does not seem to be viable for long run for the government to invest, and in that regard the private sector is actually incorporated and there is a competitive bidding process which takes place, and the tender goes to the person who is going to make the smallest bid. Then there is obviously the impetus on planning which has been provided under the budget 2024. How? The local bodies will now be getting the transformation from the finance commission, so it has got the grants of around 25,653 crore rupees. Then there will be a kind of a bottom to top approach. So now we are going to integrate the local solutions which are provided by these municipalities, and we are going to work upon that. So there will be more impetus on ground level planning now. Then obviously the government is actually putting a lot of impetus on rapid transition system, such as for example this transition system which is being created from Delhi to Meerut, and then it will be further creating the areas of Noida. The idea is that, see, this is here a particularly industrialized city. Now here there is a far-flung region which is actually underdeveloped. So a lot of people actually migrate or come to do jobs here in this industrialized city. But what if we create such a transit system that the hours to actually cover this distance reduce down to a meager low? So now these people, they will actually use this transition system that will actually reduce the congestion in this industrialized city. At the same time, the congestion which take place on the road. This is the whole idea of a rapid transition system. And then obviously the government is going to put impetus on e-bus system, because obviously they are economically viable. At the same time, they are environmental friendly as well. But a major problem with these e-buses are their upfront cost. They have high upfront cost. This is where the government is actually intervening and providing that upfront cost. Also, there are several other schemes which has been mentioned in the article today. The first is obviously the solid waste management rules of 2016, which needs to be reformed to tackle the issue of the waste management. Then obviously the report suggests that under the Swachh Bharat mission, the clean cities model of cities such as for example Indore or Ahmedabad, that can be integrated and that shall be filtrated towards other cities as well. Then the smart cities mission, as we were discussing, we need to do the green proofing of that, make it more creation of more green and blue spaces among them. Then there is obviously the Amrut scheme, which aims at the rezonization of the urban areas. Also, the report suggests that the government is going to create street vendor zones under this Street Vendors Act, as well as it is going to create hearts specifically for the local street food. So that is going to obviously increase the economy, as well as there will be a whole planned area for that. Then the government has obviously increased the capital expenditure investment. So that is going to help a lot in the improving of the urbanization sector. And the interest-free loans has been also provided to the states up to 1.5 lakh crore for the urban rejuvenation. And there is also the launching of the National Urban Digital Mission, where we are trying to propagate the digital connectivity in all the major cities and the cities under the Smart Cities Mission. Keep all of these schemes very dear to you for the upcoming mains examination. Keep using them. Try to write on the answer on this particular question, and we move forward to the next news, where the article actually throws light on various reforms which is being proposed by the UPSC in light of the recent controversies which has surrounded the UPSC. The Union Public Service Commission, which forms an important component of your GS2 paper under the larger theme of important constitutional bodies, and remember that under Article 315, it is the Central's prime recruiting agency, where it conducts examination for 14 services for both Group A and B services, and it conducts the important examinations such as civil services examination, which eventually selects the people for Indian administrative or Indian foreign services. Then it also conducts the exam for Central Armed Police Forces, such as for example CISF, CRPF and Intelligence Bureau, etc. Now look at the composition of this UPSC. So the chairman of UPSC is actually appointed by the president, and the member are also appointed by the president. The strength of member has been not specified by the constitution, and it has left that on the discretion of the president. Normally the UPSC consists of around 8 to 10 members who work under the chairman. Now, is there any qualification which is required for the members? No, there is no such qualification which has been written there, except one. The qualification is that at least 50% of these members, they shall actually come from that they have served at least 10 years either in central government services or state government services. And the term of these members are 6 years or 65 years, whichever of that comes earlier. After that, which they will have to take the retirement. Now, this central recruiting agency, how does it maintain its independence? So remember that the chairman and the members of UPSC can be removed only by the president on the ground which has already been specified in the constitution. The second is that the chairman, after retiring from the UPSC, he or she is not eligible for any further employment, neither in central government services or state government services. And then the expense of this UPSC, the pension, the salary, the allowances, all of that is charged on the Consolidated Fund of India, and thus it is not subject for the vote of Parliament. So when we have understood the importance of UPSC as a constitutional body established under Article 315 and the independence which it maintains and the important examination which it is conducting, what are the various issues which revolves around UPSC? The first is the poverty of aspirations. The poverty of aspirations, which was actually coined by the chief economist advisor to the Prime Minister, that is Sanjeev Sanyal, where he actually said that there are millions of youth which are actually wasting their formative years of life attempting for such competitive examination just to get a secure government job. The idea is that the framework of UPSC examination is such, for example, the 3 stages which it conducts, such as for example the prelims examination, the mains and then the interview, that the cycle of this examination keeps on a student in check or in circulation for next 4 to 5 years, and thus they end up wasting their formative years. That is why there was a recent suggestion which was being actually given by one of the committees of UPSC that the age shall be actually reduced down to 26 years, or there shall be 2 examinations in a year which shall be conducted. The second is that it, beside the efforts which it has taken, such as for example the GS4 ethics examination which was integrated to the examination framework, or the interview which is conducted, even despite all of that, it has been unable to force ethical selection, and that is shown by the corruption, rampant corruption which is actually taking place among the IAS officer. One recent name might be popping in your mind. Please comment down that in below. The third is obviously the generalization versus the specialization debate. So just imagine yourself as a district magistrate in a particular district in the future, and let's say that in that district there is a particular dam, Nagarjuna Sagar Dam, and there are certain technical faults which has occurred. And now, because of the virtue of position which you are holding, you are sent there to examine the structure of that dam. You don't have any specialization because what you have read are general subjects. Polity, history, economy, etc. You don't have any technical knowledge to go for the inspection there. The other debate is that because the nature of the examination is so generalized, very often these bureaucrats, they are unable to serve at the position which they get, such as, for example, if a person from history background is actually getting the Indian Revenue Services, what is the justification in this particular sense that he is going to provide the optimum services? The second is that because of such generalized subjects which one is exposed to for years, they do not actually accumulate any kind of special skill, and thus they become obsolete for the industry. That is why majority of the people who enter into these services, they do not have any other source of income or other source of job which they can look forward to, and they end up getting various just giving various kind of government exams. The next is the cloak of secrecy which UPSC revolves around itself. So it basically says that such secrecy, that how the examination is conducted, which books you have to refer to, how your marks are actually being calculated in the mains examination, all of this information is not disclosed to maintain the independence of the UPSC. But because of all of this cloak of secrecy, very often there is a kind of an injustice which is taking place to the various students. So for example, let's say there is a prelims answer key which came out, and there were certain issues in that where you are going to actually raise your voice, because there is a very limited scope of judicial review, as can be seen from the article here itself. Also, with the recent issues such as, for example, the people faking their people with disability certificates and getting job in UPSC, or some daughter of some very prominent government servant actually getting into the UPSC through some other routes, all of that has actually led to major debates revolving around UPSC, which has actually put questions on its credibility, so much so that UPSC actually had to release a press note where it has actually tried to enforce that it is deservedly earned the trust and credibility of very high order from the public. So because of these issues, and also the rampant leakage of the test and examination which is taking place, for example, the NEET case, there are various reforms which has been suggested by the UPSC panel. First is that they are going to do the Aadhaar based fingerprint authentication. The second is that now they are going to do the facial recognition or CCTV surveillance using the artificial intelligence. Then they are also going to enhance the real-time attendance monitoring by using the GPS system. And for this purpose, to integrate all of these technological solutions, the UPSC has provided a bid to the various public sector units to come forward so that it can revamp the examination structure. Keep the issues in your mind. Keep these reforms which are being proposed by the UPSC. Also, if there are certain innovative steps which you can offer, that how we can actually reform this UPSC structure and actually make it much more transparent, please put your suggestions in the comment box. We move forward to the next news. Here, the article actually provides the details about the India AI Vision or Artificial Intelligence Mission, which has been launched in the Interim Budget 2024, and the recent steps which has been taken by the Information Technology Ministry. This India Artificial Intelligence Mission forms an important component of a prelims paper under the larger theme of the important government policies and schemes. So without wasting any time, let's try to understand what does it AI mission aims for, which was actually launched in the interim budget of 2024 and has been further enhanced under the recent budget which has been launched. The budget basically aims to establish a comprehensive ecosystem for artificial intelligence, and it is going to be implemented by the India AI Independent Business Division, which has been created under the Digital India Corporation, where we are actually trying to enhance our computing ecosystem. And for that purpose, we are actually going to create a large multi-model language models under the India AI Innovation Center. Further, we are also going to create a large amount of data set platforms to streamline access to the non-personalized data sets. We are going to create application development initiatives as well as future skills, such as especially in your undergraduate, master level and PhD programs. Also, there is a startup financing and a safe trusted AI structure which is about to be developed. For this purpose, there are recent steps which has been taken by the IT ministry. What are they? First is that we are going to procure 300 to 500 graphing processing units. What are graphing processing units? They are basically the semiconductor chips on which the whole graphic model of artificial intelligence is incorporated. Now, we are going to procure these 300, 500 GPUs from other countries, and the government is going to do that. What is the reason behind it? The reason behind it is that if it comes to this GPUs, there is a company such as NVIDIA A100 chip. So the NVIDIA, it makes A100 chip, and this A100 chip has the most cutting edge technology of artificial intelligence development. Now, one chip of this actually cost around $10,000. So it is hugely expensive, and that is why our industries are actually refraining from their incorporation. That is why the government is stepping in. It is saying that we are going to procure the GPUs for you, and we are going to establish the computing capacity of more than 10,000 GPUs. Further, we are going to create a data set of 100 billion parameters. Also, data sets about what? About the various important sectors, such as, for example, the agriculture, the education, the healthcare, or for example, your cyber infrastructure which exists in our country. So for all of this, we are going to create a huge data set using the artificial intelligence, and that will be available in all the major languages which are spoken in our country. So remember the provisions of this India AI mission, and we move forward to the next section of the news, where we are going to cover some important news which can actually help you to eliminate some important statements in the upcoming prelims examination. What are these news? The first is about the right to correct information. Why it has been in the news? It has been in the news because the fact-checking unit, which was established by the Government of India, under which act? Under the Information Technology Amendment Rules of 2023. That has been brought into the question in the Bombay High Court. What does this fact-checking unit actually does? It basically submits, like for example, if there is a fact which is being circulated on any mail or WhatsApp anywhere. So I just complain it to the fact-checking unit. Now this fact-checking unit first will see that does it need to be fact-checked. If yes, then it is going to just address the from where the information has been sourced, from where it originated, whether it is correct or not, and then a public disclaimer for that will be actually released. Now when it is being challenged in the court because it can actually violate the right to privacy, the government argument has been that this fact-checking unit actually ensures what? It ensures the right to know factually correct information and the right to not be misled, and it has said that both of these rights are actually equivalent to the right to freedom of speech and expression, which are guaranteed under the Article 19 Clause 1 of the Constitution. The second important news is that the Indian Council of Medical Research (ICMR) has actually developed the world's cheapest tuberculosis detection system. Tuberculosis, which is basically a disease caused by mycobacterium, bacterial disease it is, which majorly infects the lungs of us, right? So now to detect this TB, what the ICMR has done, that it has used the CRISPR-Cas9 technology. CRISPR-Cas9 is basically what? A gene editing tool. So it is going to use this gene editing tool, and from the saliva of a human, it is going to extract the DNA using this CRISPR-Cas9 technology, and that will lead to the identification of the presence of tuberculosis in a person or not. Now it is going to provide or attempt for the patenting of this particular technique. The next news is about the ballistic missiles, specifically related to the ballistic missile of India, that is Agni 5. How does this ballistic missile works? They basically works on the law which are determined by the mechanics and the ballistics, where the missile is actually released in the troposphere. Then it follows the natural path of it, a glided path, and ultimately detonates at the target which was set. Example of such missile is the Agni missile, which was created by the India, which has a range of 5,000 km. Now, is it the world's longest ranging missile? No, the answer is not. That is of USA, then there is China, and India is here with Agni 5 at 6th place. Now, the next news is about the bunny grasslands. Why the bunny grasslands are in the news? Because you might have heard about the cheetahs reintroduction which we have done from the region of Africa. First, they were introduced into the Kuro National Park of Madhya Pradesh. Now, the next viable site which are being considered for the introduction of this cheetah, the next lot which we are bringing from Africa, the first is the Gandhi Sagar Sanctuary in the Madhya Pradesh, and the second is the Bunny Grasslands. Bunny grasslands are basically the vast grasslands in the southern part of the Run of Kutch area, expanding to about 3,500 km square. However, in the introduction of cheetah, there exists a major issue. The issue is that there are presence of antelopes which basically act as a food for the carnivore species, that is cheetah. The antelopes such as chinkara and blackbuck, they are present in the region, but they are not enough in the number. So there are not enough prey for cheetah which are found in the Bunny grassland. Bunny grassland, where the government is actually creating a kind of a boma. Boma is basically a kind of a conservation center for cheetahs. But there is an advantage for which the government is actually considering the place, and that is that in this region there lies no competition because there is complete absence of leopards in the region of Bunny grasslands in the region of Run of Kutch. Remember these specific details for your prelims examination. With this, we have reached to the end of our discussion today. Do not forget to attempt the questions at the end of the video and test your knowledge. We will meet in a very interesting discussion very soon. Till then, all the very best for your preparation and thank you.